DC's Lanterns in James Gunn's new DC universe just premiered on HBO, and I watched the first episode. Here are my thoughts. I had a lot of faith in the show coming in because the trailers did look different from the flavors that we've gotten from James Gunn's DC universe thus far. From Superman to Supergirl to Peacemaker, all the stuff we've seen so far just has that same sillier tone. But Lanterns felt like a very different show from the get-go, just seeing the trailers. Everything I thought and hoped Lanterns would be tonally was absolutely true after watching this first episode. It is grounded, it is grittier, it has the dynamic and tone of a true detective type show where they're investigating and the story comes out through discovering things and looking at evidence and talking to characters, and it's kind of a slow burn. And I really appreciate the writing and the dramatic way that they unveil and reveal things along the way. I also really appreciate the casting choices. Kyle Chandler as Hal Jordan is just, in my opinion, absolutely perfect. He's an older Hal. He's kind of jaded. He's run down. And he knows what he's doing. He's very cocky. He's confident in himself. He's kind of condescending. And he's kind of a smartass. But that's kind of why we love the character, right? You see those kind of characters in shows, and they, in real life, would piss everybody off. But on TV, they're just so much fun to watch. Billy Bob Thornton in Landman is a good example of that. He's kind of a jerk to everybody. He's really sassy. He's really snarky. And I think that works really well with Hal Jordan's character played by Kyle Chandler. Aaron Pierre, who I still am not familiar with his work, just totally impressed me with his portrayal as Jon Stewart. He has this seriousness about him. He has a nice contrast to the cocky showboat that is Kyle Chandler's Hal Jordan. He doesn't really like Hal Jordan. He's kind of resentful of how unserious Hal Jordan can be most of the time, and it just kind of annoys him. But he puts up with it because he wants to earn his position as the next Green Lantern to replace Hal Jordan. I have a lot of scenes where their dynamic is so hilarious. Their banter is just pure comedic gold. The Green Lantern powers aren't on full display quite yet. We see a little bit here and there with him creating the dollar bill and him putting the shield around the alien. We see Hal Jordan using his flight skills and that sort of thing. But I actually appreciate that they didn't overload us with too much Green Lantern stuff just yet. We're getting more character developing. We're getting more a glimpse into their relationship. We got some flashbacks and some history. And they did some world building in this setting that is kind of out in the desert, kind of the small sleepy town vibe. They're out in Nebraska. They're investigating this incident where there's apparently a mass shooting, but Hal's onto it. He knows that there's probably more to it than that, and he suspects there's aliens. And it is fun to see these Green Lanterns in this small town and how the small town interacts with these celebrities, essentially. Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart do have a good dynamic. They have a good chemistry, and it's very believable how they kind of tolerate each other. They don't like each other, but they have to work together. And I love that dynamic throughout this show. It makes for a very fun kind of buddy-buddy, Jackie Chan, Owen Wilson, Jackie Chan, Chris Tucker kind of situation. The best scene must have been that interrogation where Hal Jordan is adamant that it's an alien. No one believes him until he gets in there and starts interviewing him, and everything seems normal, and maybe Hal's wrong, and it seems like a normal guy, and then he starts questioning about random details, and then when he asks about Barack Obama, that's when he gives a very generic answer, and that's kind of what shows his hand. And we've seen this kind of scene before in these similar detective crime mystery type shows where they slowly reveal themselves during the interrogation. But I thought this was done particularly well. Hats off to the actor who played the suspect in Alien. I thought he did a great job kind of misleading us into thinking he's just a normal guy. But turns out, no, he was an alien all along that was playing them just like Hal thought. I like that there's time jumps, so we get kind of the young Hal and kids, Jon Stewart watching young Hal on TV. We get them at the beginning of Jon Stewart's training, and then we fast forward another 10 years where Hal Jordan is now deceased, apparently. We'll talk about that. So when they fast forward 10 years, Jon Stewart is an established Green Lantern, presumably, and he finds that Hal Jordan is just sitting on those same bleachers that we saw in this episode when they're investigating the mass shooting, and he's just frozen to death, which leaves a big cliffhanger, an open question. Is he actually dead? Maybe. I don't know. I feel like it could be a red herring. We did see his hologram that you can touch and feel and talk to just as if he was there. So maybe it's possible that he dumped his hologram. I don't know. Or alternatively, since we know that aliens can take the form of human beings, maybe an alien took the form of Hal Jordan, or Hal Jordan's actually dead, or Hal Jordan is in a weird state where he can be brought back. I don't know. Either way, there's going to be plenty of opportunity to see Kyle Chandler perform as Hal Jordan, because we can always go back to when he was a young Hal Jordan before Jon Stewart grew up. We can go back to their early training years as most of the episode took place in, and then we can do anything leading up to that moment where they find him presumably frozen to death. We didn't see Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner yet, so hopefully he'll make an appearance soon. But overall, I'm very happy with the direction that the show is taking. It is such a refreshing break from the slapstick silliness of every other DC project that we've seen so far in this universe. And it gives me hope that DC is not completely unsalvageable. I think if each project kind of takes it upon itself to create its own tone and create its own kind of characteristic and its own way of storytelling, then I think we have potential to see some really good projects. So perhaps not every project is going to be as silly and as stupid as Superman, Supergirl, and Peacemaker. Now, sometimes those work. Peacemaker is inherently stupid, but the comedy works. For me, Supergirl worked, even though I'm learning now, a lot of people dislike that movie for various reasons. I thought it was good for what it was. I thought it was entertaining for what it was. But here we have something that is refreshingly mature and dark and grounded. And that gives me hope that other projects, namely something like Batman, will also be equally dark, gritty, and more for adult, more mature, and not as cartoony as some of the stuff we've seen so far. So looking forward to the rest of the season. I think we have 8 episodes. I'm going to try to review them at least in chunks, if not by each episode. So stay tuned for additional commentary for The Lantern Show.